Courtnie Nein, Wealth Manager here at Good Life Financial Advisors. I hope everyone is off to a wonderful start to 2024. As many of you know, I do these video updates from time to time, and this year I want to do things a little bit different and invite different professionals that I work with and or people within the office that play a huge role in the day-to-day operations of what we do on your behalf. So today, I am joined with Noah Brooks. Noah is the Director of Investments here at Good Life, and many of you have probably seen Noah throughout the years. He has been with us for over 10 years now, and or probably know his dog, Finn, better than you know Noah, but now you can put a face to the name, as I do speak of Noah quite often. So Noah, today you're here with us and you're going to share a little bit about what you do on behalf of our clients from an investment standpoint, and then we do want to talk a little bit about how we got to where we are today and potentially look out to the rest of, a little preview of this year.
Yeah,
not that we have
absolutely.
that crystal ball, but I think a little insight as what to anticipate in 2024. So first thing, Noah, would you mind explaining to everybody what your role is here at Good Life and,
Sure.
and just the investment process
Yeah,
in general?
absolutely. So Director of Investment here at Good Life Advisors. And as the Director of Investments, essentially what I do is develop the strategic models, and my team and I do the due diligence on the underlying investment selection. So people like yourself can choose the right investment model depending on the client's risk tolerance or ability to absorb downside, or what their level of aggressiveness would be.
Okay. And, in simpler terms, when a lot of you do see those long statements come in the mail on a quarterly basis, and we do the rebalance and we're moving the funds around, safe to say, Noah, that's you and your team,
That is
going
definitely
in and tweaking the portfolio, trying to position things well for a go-forward basis.
That is definitely myself and my team.
So the last several years have been pretty volatile, right? Safe to say, Noah. How did we get here, and what can you kind of say about life sort of since COVID? And I know we're all so tired of talking about COVID, but I think from a market perspective, we do have to kind of go back to 2020, because I think a lot of what we have seen in the last 18 to 24 months really is a fallout, more or less, or an effect from what happened during COVID. So
you said 18 to 24 months. I just want to correct you. It's been 4 years.
Well, 18 to 24 months, I mean, since, the 2022, market correction that we had, right? So the last 18 to 24 months of the market in general has been volatile. But yeah, we're coming up on 4 years since
it's
COVID.
crazy.
It is.
So go back a little bit. I mean, the two biggest things that have happened over the last 3-4 years have been COVID and have been inflation.
Yeah.
And we all know COVID, we had a lockdown, right? 2 weeks to stop the spread that turned out to be significantly longer than that. I think you and I were sitting in the conference room and Friday the 13th.
Yes.
And we said that was it, no more. And then the governor declared the lockdown over the weekend, maybe. And, a lot of things have transpired since that Friday the 13th. Certainly COVID wrecked the lives of many people. We lost a lot of Americans, certainly people in other countries as well. We had those lockdowns, and then really from the lockdowns, it was about a behavior change. I mean, I know you and I were doing the same thing. We were enjoying each other's company around Blue Marsh, right? We weren't going out. There were no restaurants open, or very few, and everybody was masking up. But how does that translate into what happened to the economy? So you have the shutdown, you have the Federal Reserve that lowered interest rates pretty dramatically. They took rates to zero. They learned from the global financial crisis that they didn't want a lockup in the economy, even though there was a forced shutdown, which is a lockup. They wanted to make sure that there was money available for banks to lend, right? Because in 2008 into 2009, that was really the problem, is that the banks didn't want to lend. And when banks don't lend and the money supply stops moving, it's a bad situation. But that money supply in the economy is kind of like the lubrication in your car, the oil in your car. And so the Federal Reserve was forced into action, brought rates down to zero. And then you have stimulus happening, PPP, you have checks going out to people. And really the behavior changes. And then you get into a scenario where prices started going up. And I want to pause just for a second and talk about the last 40 years and like summarize inflation, what's been going on over the last 40 years. Americans love cheap goods. We have been finding the low-cost producer of almost every possible item. And normally the low-cost producer for us is outside the United States. A lot of times it's in China. Sometimes it's in India and Pakistan and other countries. But we essentially have been importing disinflation for the last 40 years, which means the prices of goods and some services continue to go down on an inflation-adjusted basis. So then, okay, fast forward, we've been importing disinflation for the last 40 years. You fast forward to this COVID, this lockdown, and those lockdowns weren't just American lockdowns. In 2022, China was locked down. Mm-hmm. And you have these massive supply chain issues. So prior to COVID, it would take about 2 weeks, up to 20 days to get a container ship from the east coast of China to the west coast of the United States. And the average price was about $1,500 a container, give or take a little bit. During the Chinese lockdown in early 22, the prices went from around $1,500 a container up to almost $20,000 a container. Yeah. And in some cases, the cost of moving that stuff from China to the United States was more expensive than the cost of the actual product in the container. So you have that scenario playing out. You also have the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which drove oil prices through the roof. I think they hit over $145 a barrel one day, which means oil and gasoline went crazy. $5 an economy around here. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I think we all felt that. You know?
Yeah, everybody felt it. I mean, you don't have to worry about it now with your electric vehicle, right? But everybody felt that inflation, and the Fed had to act. Yeah. So they went on a rate raising spree, and they took interest rates from essentially zero up to around 5.5% in about a year and a half. Yeah. You know, and that was really the crux of 2022's market downturn, because everybody thought the Federal Reserve raising rates was going to put the economy on life support. Really, was going to just stop the economy, make us go into a recession. And the fact of the matter is, all of those wonderful economists out there, they were wrong.
They were wrong.
Yeah, we did not have a recession in 2022. We didn't have a recession in 2023. 2023 turned out to be a great year in the stock market.
It did, as evidenced by the year-end statements. I think things,
Yeah, fourth quarter was outstanding.
It was, and I think some of that was in the anticipation of rates being cut, or at least no more rate hikes happening. I think the market doesn't like the unknown, and the not knowing what's going to happen next, I think, created a lot of volatility. And but once we heard the Fed say we're nearing the end of the rate hike campaign, I think it kind of was like a pause for relief there.
And so what I want everybody to think about is, I'm going to summarize inflation with 2 or 3 main points, right? Supply chain issues and behavior patterns. 3. Additional money into the economy from the Federal Reserve, because they didn't want to go into recession. And now what you have is the supply chain is basically fixed. Oil prices are down. We still have a raging war in Ukraine. We have a new war in the Middle East, right? Which we didn't address so far yet today, and I don't know that we'll get there. But all of those inflationary patterns are essentially coming back down. Oil, gas is $3.40 yesterday, I saw. Home prices, even though they're not going down, they've stopped going up pretty dramatically.
A little bit of a leveling out.
Yeah, definitely a leveling out. And so the Federal Reserve, I can't use the word guarantee anywhere, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to raise again, and everybody's asking when they're going to lower.
Yeah. And I think maybe the market got a little bit ahead of itself, thinking like rate cuts were happening, right away.
Yeah.
And we did see some volatility start the year out because it was like, they're going to be cut, not yet. So we're sort of in that like waiting game of waiting to see when rates will be cut and what that looks like. But yeah, I mean, I think we can all say we go to the grocery store and we see shelves are full again and car lots are full again, and all the weird things that were kind of happening are sort of behind us. So with all of that being said, Noah, where do you think that sets us up for 2024? Having come off this fairly strong year in 2023, I think there were some bright spots in 2023, but fixed income still has a ways to go in terms of coming back. But how do you see 2024 playing
Yeah,
out?
it's a great question. Everybody wants to know that. It really comes down to two things. One of them is sticky inflation. Is inflation going to get to the Federal Reserve's 2% target? Right now, CPI is around 3.1, the Consumer Price Index. And how long is it going to stay there? Because I don't know that the Fed is going to be inclined to lower rates if it's not at its target. And there's been some talk about, well, the Fed might change its target rate, right? Instead of the target being 2, maybe they'll raise it to 2.5, or maybe they'll raise it to 3. I'm not sure that they want to do that. I also am not sure that the Fed is prepared to lower rates as early as the market wants them to lower rates, right? So a month ago, there was about an 80% probability based on Fed futures that they were going to lower in March. Today, there's about a 45% chance that they're going to lower in March. And personally, I don't think it's going to happen until at least the second quarter, maybe the third quarter. But your question was, what's going to happen in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was like 500 and some odd days between all-time, new highs in the S&P 500. So that was it's a pretty long stretch that we've, been through since we've now seen the markets, go on the other side. So yeah, here we are, markets are up a little bit, but it's probably safe to say too that we won't know how the markets will react until the Fed actually goes in and does that first rate cut. But there's the risk of doing it too soon and us ending up back where we are.
The Federal Reserve does not want a replay of the 70s and early 80s, right? So in that time frame, you had the Arab oil embargo, you had a supply chain shock, and you had a situation where the Federal Reserve initially had raised rates and they actually lowered them, and they lowered them too early, and they do not want a replay of that. So even though the market is anticipating a reduction in rates, I mean, we're going to get a reduction in rates at some point. They may not do it. I don't think they're going to do it in March.
Yeah.
I doubt April, May, June. I think it's later in the year. And so I think as there's a realization that it might be later in the year, we might have some just grinding in the market.
A little volatility.
But what does the market act on? There's two things, right? There's the emotional side of it, and then there's the earnings side of it. And on the earnings front, things aren't great, but they're also not horrible.
Right.
And we have this new impact in productivity. What is it? Artificial intelligence, right? So in my mind, you have the 90s that was really a go-go 90s because of all these productivity gains because of computers. Now we have a scenario where we're looking at productivity gains, massive productivity gains because of artificial intelligence across almost every industry. It just doesn't have to be technology that benefits from those. So there's an opportunity out there for incredible productivity gains, which essentially means earnings. And so there's a lot of people that are bearish on the markets. I'm not going to give you a year-end target. We
don't know. We don't have the crystal ball.
Yeah, there's a range of outcomes, but I'm definitely not bearish. I don't think that this is the year that everything goes bad.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. I think it's, in the wait and see is what I'm gathering. Once Fed does that first rate cut, I think we see how the markets react. I'm sure the markets will get tired and frustrated until we see that first rate cut, and then it's going to be, let's see how things go. So Noah, thank you for all of that great information. So just to summarize for everybody, inflation is cooling. We're waiting on the Fed, and we're going to be in for a little bit of grinding the next several months, I would say, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you found this useful, and if you did, we ask that you share this with your friends and family. And as I see all of you throughout your annual reviews, we'll probably be recapping a lot of this information and getting the new information to you as it is coming. So thank you for listening, and we will see all of you next time.